Hello and welcome to Professor Jordan's Whys of History number 7, where Good Morning Vietnam! Man, Sam, this took us like 3 or 4 months to put together, and I don't think we have anything like super exciting to show for it, do we?
Well, we could try my intro idea.
Oh, Sam, your ideas are cool, but they're like really artistic and kind of bombastic, and they get expensive pretty quickly. But I mean, we don't really have anything else, so let's see what you got. Doo-doo, doo-doo. Doo-doo, doo-doo. Sawabone! Made to raise a flag! Oh, that red, white, and blue! When the band plays...
And that's when I ran out of money after tripling our budget.
And that's when I stopped listening to you. This next topic was a viewer recommendation and is going to dramatically tighten the scope of the topic compared to our last Let's Cover Something That Touches on like all of European history over hundreds of years episode. It's going to take us away from Europe entirely, which I think is probably for the best, lest we all start talking in accents and drinking fine wine and socializing our healthcare. Hell, Sam's already insulting American beer.
People pay for this?
And he won't shut up about some football thing. Yes, in this next episode, we're going to say adios, ciao, auf Wiedersehen, and au revoir to Europe, and look at an event that helped to define the United States and its role in world affairs in the post-World War II world. From that description right there, and also probably the giant title strapped to the top of this video, it should be pretty clear we're going to talk about what Americans just call Vietnam, but what is more descriptively called the Vietnam War. Specifically, we're going to look at why exactly the United States decided to dump over 2 million troops into some random Southeast Asian country over the course of a decade. Here to tell us more about Americans in Vietnam, we turn to our head correspondent, who's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude, Sam.
Thanks, Jordan, but I think that's too many disguises for me to keep straight. I'm gonna put on this hat instead. I'm here in what appears to be 1960s Vietnam. The fellow behind me in the green fatigues and brain bucket keeps telling me to look out for Charlie, but I think you should look out for Pokemon in this tall grass. In many ways, the Vietnam War is still very familiar to us. Flash a peace sign and you conjure images of the counterculture movement. Turn on the radio and we're still playing music of the era. But why is it so familiar to us? It's because history is shaped as much by the collective memory of an event as it is by the events themselves. And because the Vietnam War dominated so much of America's 20th century, it continues to be a regular part of our collective memory. Picture in your head American troops in Vietnam. Are there helicopters overhead? Are there guys with playing cards in their helmets? Is someone listening to Creedence? Is someone shouting for Lieutenant Dan? This is our collective memory of the Vietnam War, and is forever linked to its artistic representation. Before the 1960s, Americans got a relatively filtered view of war. In 1917, Woodrow Wilson passed the Espionage Act, effectively silencing anyone who would speak out against America's involvement in the war. President Roosevelt coerced news outlets and news reporters to only publish photographs of wounded American soldiers only if they were receiving aid. So you can imagine the shock Americans must have felt when in 1943 they saw the first images of dead American servicemen in a Life magazine. In Korea, President Truman held similar policies as Wilson and Roosevelt, and General MacArthur did his best to control the media with his bellicose bragging. So what allowed Americans to get the information they were lacking in previous wars? It was the overwhelming presence of TV cameras and reporters. Fed up with government censorship, reporters began sending more and more graphic images and reports back to the people back home. And Americans were truly shocked to see what was going on in Vietnam. The images that shocked and awed the American public were translated to films that attempted to capture the same sense. When you think about books or films about the Vietnam War, what words come to mind? Brutal? Graphic? Realistic? Depressing? This is no accident. Apocalypse Now, Full Metal Jacket, even Forrest Gump all attempted to capture the realism of the war. And this almost hyper-realism was a far cry from the films of previous wars. Because Americans had received filtered views of those wars, films of the era had similar filters. Not only do we have a distinct look to the war, it also has its own soundtrack. Music of the 1960s and early 70s overwhelmingly dealt with America's involvement in the Vietnam War. But our memory of the war is also shaped by the way we choose to honor its dead. The Vietnam War Memorial Wall in Washington, D.C. stands in stark contrast to the other monuments on the National Mall. There is no air of martiality, no sense of victory or loss, just one of honor. It stands as a reminder of our participation in an event that even today we still don't truly understand or accept.
Thanks, Sam. My collective memory of you is one that involves a lot of pomade, jokes about my mom, and all those times I forced you to go outside and film long segments in really uncomfortable environments. I kind of like this one.
Aw, thanks, Jordan. Though I have to say, I don't have any collective memory of you. I just don't like you that much. Sam out. Hey, can you order me a pizza on that thing?
So in part 1 of our next set, we're going to discuss the lead up to Vietnam and the conditions that brought America into the conflict. And in the second part, we're going to look at how the justification / reasoning for American involvement changed and adapted as time went on. As always, you can find both of those suckers right over here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next class. Sam segment, jungle, Vietnam, radio. Okay.